tell you what a wonderful experience this has been. And the friends I've made will last a lifetime. I've told some of the younger men in here, and I have to look at one, that, you know, they've got to remember that the shelf life of a representative is about 48 hours, and not to take that, you know, to remember that. But I should have added that if you're a representative, your shelf life with another fellow representative is a lifetime, and that we are indeed families.
Veteran lawmaker Representative Penny Houston of Nashville in South Georgia announced her retirement from the legislature after serving for 26 years. Good evening and welcome to Lawmakers on this day 23 of the Georgia legislative session. I'm Donna Lowry in Atlanta. On the show, a lawmaker is advocating for legalizing marijuana. Among her supporting arguments is the number of products sold in stores across the state containing parts of the marijuana plant. Also, last week, Governor Brian Kemp directed the National Guard to deploy additional troops to the U.S. southern border. In the studio to talk about it, Senate Majority Leader Steve Gooch, who sponsored the resolution. Also with us, Democratic Senator Josh McLaurin, who voted against it. We'll also look at a measure to create a committee to investigate veterans' mental health and homelessness. And there's a resolution to designate a Georgia Wine Month that will recognize wine's place in Georgia's history. You'll want to hear how wine is connected to Georgia becoming a colony. But first, as always, we get our Capitol report from Capitol correspondent Sarah Callis.
Hi, Donna. It was a nuts and bolts kind of day at the Capitol as lawmakers passed bills about education and taxes.
In the Senate, 5 bills were passed. 2 of note, SB 360 would increase capital outlay funds to help school systems create pre-K programs in their districts.
Y'all remember how important that we've said that if a child goes, if the senator from the 2nd goes to pre-K and the senator from 2nd goes to kindergarten, and me, if I do not go to pre-K or kindergarten, the senator from 2nd is already 2 years ahead of me when we go in 1st grade.
And SB 449 would exempt certain medical professionals coming out of the military from having to go through the exam process to practice in the state.
We've got a rural healthcare workforce shortage and really a healthcare workforce shortage throughout the state. This bill will recognize the training and certification that our military personnel get in the military and allow them to quickly and kind of seamlessly enter into our healthcare workforce.
Both bills passed unanimously. And the controversy surrounding Fulton County District Attorney Fani Willis and her relationship with her co-counsel, made public last week at a special hearing, also came up on the floor.
The optics of this prosecution for personal profit is not being perceived well by the general public. You ask why? Because of the conflict of interest, the money involved, the vacations, the coordination with the White House, speaking in the pulpit of a church and making this about race. And just an overall poor judgment has led the public to ask, what is going on here?
Senator David Lucas took exception to the comments.
You get up here. You ain't said nothing about the man making the call to find me 11,000 votes. You didn't say nothing about the man who raped a woman in the dressing room and got to pay all this money. Let's stop dealing with bedroom politics. Let it play out. They got a judge in the case. Let the evidence show.
In the House, a longtime Georgia representative announced her retirement today. Representative Penny Houston will not run for re-election after representing Nashville, Georgia in the State House since 1997.
I cannot tell you what a wonderful experience this has been. And the friends I've made will last a lifetime. I've told some of the younger men in here, and I have to look at one, that, you know, they've got to remember that the shelf life of a representative is about 48 hours, and not to take that, you know, to remember that. But I should have added that if you're a representative, your chef life with another fellow representative is a lifetime, and that we are indeed families.
As for the business of the day, the House overwhelmingly approved a bill dealing with millage rates for local school systems.
What this bill does is take into account the increased property values we have seen across the state, and it lowers that 14 mil threshold set 5 years ago to a new proposed threshold of 10 mils. The bill basically lowers our millage rate to accommodate for increased property assessments, just as we might require a local government to do.
They also okayed a measure that would require public schools to offer an aptitude test to 11th and 12th grade students to see if they would be suitable candidates for a military career. House members also held a moment of silence for a state trooper, Chase Redner, who died after being struck by a car in Clayton County last night.
Chase Redner succumbed to his injuries. Terrible loss of a young man. Our hearts and our prayers go out to the family. I know you all join me in those thoughts.
Also today, lawmakers acknowledged Lupus Advocacy Day while wearing purple capes. Representative Kim Schofield, who has lupus, thanked advocates who traveled to the Capitol.
We are here to recognize them for the work that they do 365 days of living with lupus. So on behalf of the team that's upstairs, and we have some that are in the Senate, I would like to ask them to stand and be recognized. They are the champions in the street, but we are the champions here in this house for lupus.
The Poor People's Campaign held a press conference at the Capitol calling on lawmakers to reduce poverty and providing a list of policy priorities they think will help the issue.
Our goals are to change the narrative on these interlocking injustices, build the power of poor and low-income people, and move the political will to establish justice and promote the general welfare of all. The Poor People's Campaign is organizing across Georgia to bring attention and power to the 4,447,000 poor and low-income people in our state of Georgia.
Lawmakers will return to the Capitol tomorrow for Day 24. We expect to hear press conferences on foster care and reproductive freedom. That's all for my Capitol Report. Donna, back to you.
Thank you for that report, Sarah. In 2015, Georgia legalized marijuana oil for medical purposes, making it available to patients suffering from certain illnesses to help with seizures and pain. Since then, the law has expanded to allow for products made by parts of marijuana plants, but marijuana for recreational use is still illegal. Joining me is a lawmaker who wants to change that, Democratic Representative Shelley Hutchinson of Snellville. Her background is in social work with a focus on social services and child welfare. Welcome to Lawmakers. Thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me.
So you wrote an opinion piece that ran in the Atlanta Journal-Constitution titled "Legalizing Marijuana Would Safeguard Users and Increase Georgia's Revenue."
Yes.
Tell us about it.
So right now, just like you said, marijuana is illegal for recreational use in Georgia. In other states, which is half of the country at this point, those products are taxed at a really high rate to support things like regulation and watching the things that we're ingesting and buying in the commercial market. We don't have that. Since it's illegal, we don't have the funds to monitor what's there already. And some things are legal, like Delta 8, but we don't have a mechanism to see if it's still within the legal range of THC or if it's outside the legal range. My guess is it's outside the legal range, but we have no way of testing it. And the GBI does not have the resources to test small quantities like you would get at a store.
So it's not taxed at this point?
It's not taxed.
So you sent a picture that we're going to put up on the screen showing snacks containing levels of THC. Tell us what we're seeing and where you found this.
So I found this at a smoke shop, actually not far from here, from the studio. I walked in because one thing about Georgia being not a legal state, since it's not legal, there's no regulation about how these products are marketed. So you can walk past this, and this is what I saw through a glass window.
So we're seeing Doritos.
Doritos.
It has the name Ruffles on it. I noticed that is
Skittles.
Right.
Funyuns.
And the only way, and you have to really look close, is there's a little symbol that says there's a level of THC in it,
Correct.
right?
Correct.
So I know that kids don't go into these shops.
No, they're not supposed to.
Okay.
And usually there is a sign that says you have to show your ID. I've never seen them ask for ID, versus if you're in a state where it was legal, you have to give them your ID. They have to scan your information so that they know exactly who walked in. Since we have no regulation, none of that is being done. And it is, we can buy products here the same way we can buy it in legal states. It's just we don't know what's in it.
Yeah, so you said you talked to somebody there and they told you about
Yes.
taking, like one of the cookies says Trips Ahoy.
Trips Ahoy,
Okay,
yes.
so that kind of gives you an idea, but
Yes.
some of them, it's hard to tell.
Yes.
And what did he tell you about eating
I
some of
asked
this
him
stuff?
how strong they were, and he said that he ate a small bag of Funyuns and he passed out.
Wow.
And he said that he uses apparently marijuana frequently and he's never had that reaction. And he doesn't know why it's so strong, how it's so strong, or why he had that reaction to it.
Yeah, so what, is there legislation at this point, or are you working on that?
I, in conjunction with the op-ed, I dropped 2 bills today. One is a study committee to see how much illegal products we have on the market and if we have the resources to clean it up. I suspect that we don't, because if you can go to any smoke shop, any part of the state, and get these types of products. So if we don't have the resources to clean it up, we have to legalize it. We don't have a choice because we need the revenue so we can monitor what we are ingesting, what our kids are ingesting, because right now we just don't know.
Okay, I want to talk about you're a co-sponsor on a couple of bills that would decriminalize marijuana.
Yes.
Talk about those briefly.
So we have had an effort with, if we can't get it legal, to make it decriminalized, because no one should sit in a jail because they had a small amount of marijuana. And at this point, you can't tell the difference between marijuana and a Delta 8 or something that is actually legal. So we really just need to decriminalize, because since we don't know, no one should be incarcerated for a product that they, in good faith, bought legally.
Okay, I want to switch gears a little bit because your background is in social work.
Yes.
Years ago, you worked for DFACS,
Yes.
and you founded the Social Empowerment Center, which is a mental health and social services outreach treatment center in Lawrenceville. And I want to give some of the background as we switch to one of your other passions, and
Yes.
that's helping foster children get adopted. And you've advocated for them since you began serving in 2019. And I want to play a little of what you said on the floor of the House earlier this session.
Instead of introducing a child available for adoption, after the last session, I went back and looked at all of the children I have introduced over the last 4 years, and I am here to tell you, not one single child is still available for adoption. That means they've been adopted, they have another permanent outcome, but they're no longer on that website.
Talk about what this mission is for you.
So during my career at DFACS, and I worked there for many years, either as an employee or a contractor, and I've always worked with children who have been adopted or in foster care and awaiting adoption. We have a website, it's called My Turn Now, www.myturnnow.com or .org, and those are all the children that are in the state's custody that are available for adoption. So as often as I can, I go to that website and I pick a child who's looking for their forever home, and I introduce them. I've done that since I was sworn in 2019. And after the last session, I went back and looked at all the kids I'd introduced, and none of them were still available for adoption. So I can't say that I did that alone. I know I didn't. It was the Office of Adoptions. But to say that all of those children have been adopted or have another permanent outcome is very special.
Yeah, very, very positive, great news. Last week we had Senators Kay Kirkpatrick and Kim Jackson on Lawmakers, and they talked about some of the findings from a Senate committee on foster care and adoption and that they serve on. And one of the areas of concern is salaries for those who work in foster and adoption care.
You know, these people that are frontline caseworkers have really hard jobs, and they need as many resources as we can give them. One of the tools that we are giving them is something called a closed-loop referral tracking system that will help them connect their job with all the nonprofits and different organizations that can help them, and then the results are tracked along the way. So it's not all just money, but we do need to work on the salary issue and training and some other things that can help our frontline workers.
Yeah. So the salary issue is serious in terms of people wanting to work in that in that area for
Absolutely.
defects. Yeah.
And I can tell you, as a former caseworker, that definitely does need to be addressed. It's hard to get people to go into the field, into social work field, if the jobs are paying not a livable wage, and you have school loans to go and get a degree and a master's degree, and you don't have a wage where you can have a family, pay your obligations, and pay school loans. It's just not possible today in 2024.
Yeah, another issue they brought up, and I didn't realize it, is how little the people who are foster care parents and adoptive parents are paid. Talk about foster care parents in particular. How much do they receive?
So there's a daily rate for foster parents. It's a per diem for foster parents. The last time I checked, it was around $12 or $13 a day to take a child of any age, mainly with any behavior. And that $12 a day doesn't cover much at all. If anybody's raising any child today, $12 a day just doesn't work. And it's hard enough to be a foster parent, but when you don't have the funds to support all of your foster children's needs, you're setting that foster parent up for failure, and that's never a good situation.
I know they're looking to put some more in the budget.
Yes.
So I want to get one more thing up before we leave, and that is to leave people with a reminder of the number that they can call for if they want to be foster or adoptive parents. You can call 1-877-210-KIDS or 5437 for Georgia foster care and adoption information. So we hope that maybe some people will look at that and do that. But thank you for coming on, and we'll keep up with what's going on with the bills you talked about.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Appreciate that. Coming up, Georgia National Guard troops are headed to Texas to help with border security. Lawmakers from each side of the aisle are here to talk about it with us. So stay with us.
Lawmakers is made possible by Georgia Farm Bureau. With over 80 years of helping everyone understand the importance of agriculture in our state. After all, ag is Georgia's #1 industry. Food and fiber production represents over $74 billion in output of Georgia's strong economy. The Georgia Farm Bureau legislative team works to represent producers across Georgia at the state capitol during the session and year-round. Georgia Farm Bureau, the voice of Georgia farmers.
People put their faith in PBS because they know that it is constantly delivering quality. It covers the whole of the United States. It's a free and independent media.
We go where the viewers are.
What are the conversations that are happening right now?
We feel that civil discourse is a civic responsibility.
What we do is authentic reporting that people can trust.
We give time so you can hear voices on all sides of an issue.
This is the place that people turn to for stories that matter.
And they know that when they walk away, they will have learned something about the world around them.
That's why this makes PBS important for daily life and, in the end, our world.
Thank you for joining us.
Community. Learning, working, playing, celebrating, doing life is always better together. At GPB, we aim to provide you with the tools to be able to do life together well. Our mission to educate, inform, and entertain inspires everything from our wide range of programming to our stimulating radio conversations to our fun in-person events. We've got something for everyone. Visit gpb.org/community to learn more about our upcoming events.
Welcome back to Lawmakers. I'm Donna Lowry. Last week, at the direction of Governor Brian Kemp, Georgia joined Operation Lone Star to provide support by deploying National Guard troops to Texas. The Senate voted along party lines for the resolution to support the effort. Joining me is the sponsor of that bill, Republican Senator Majority Leader Steve Gooch of Dahlonega, who has served since 2010. He is an ex officio member of about 7 committees, including Ethics and Veterans, Military, and Homeland Security. Also here is Democratic Senator Josh McLaurin of Sandy Springs. He served in the Georgia House for 4 years also, before his election to the Senate in 2022. He's also on the Veterans, Military, and Homeland Security Committee. Thank you both for being here. I appreciate this. Leader Gooch, let's get right into it, into your border security resolution, SR 543. Tell us about it.
Well,
Well, it is pretty straightforward. If you watched Governor Kemp last week, you heard some of the same concerns that he expressed about the border security in our country that we have expressed in our resolution. And you're right, it fell straight down party lines, which is not a surprise to most people who follow politics. But Donna, if you go back to when Donald Trump left office, one of the first things that President Biden did was he reversed a lot of the decisions that were made by the Trump administration. One of those was the building of the wall and the security of the border along the southern part of our country, to include Texas all the way to California. And since that time, we've seen millions of illegals crossing into our country. They're not coming through the ports and through the border crossings. They're just coming through whatever way they can get in. They're being smuggled in by illegals from Mexico, and they're coming from all over the world. And quite frankly, we do not know who they are, where they're coming from, or what purpose they're here for. They're smuggling drugs, fentanyl. They're smuggling in people for sex trafficking, and it's a real danger. Even Democrat mayors across the nation, to include the mayor of New York and other mayors around the country, have expressed concern about the thousands of illegals that are coming into their cities. There's nowhere for them to live or to sleep, to be fed, or even to work. And so this is a big concern of not just Republicans. It's a concern for Democrats, Republicans, independents, and everyone in between. And so this resolution was to encourage our Congress, not just Democrats, but our Congress and the White House, to find a solution for the illegal immigrants that are coming into our country. Also, it was to support Governor Kemp in his efforts to help send resources to Texas for Governor Abbott. And so we saw 15 other governors join Governor Kemp in Texas 2 weeks ago to show solidarity and support for all the states around the southern border. So I think this is important that we took a stand. This bill doesn't move the needle in moving immigrations in or out of our country, but it sends a strong message to Washington, D.C. to tell our elected officials in Congress and in the White House, we need a solution to this problem.
Okay. I know that you voted against it. Tell us why.
I did. I can speak for myself, but I think a lot of my colleagues agree that this resolution was basically just election year posturing. The point of the resolution was to condemn the president because of issues that have been longstanding issues with the border that we are trying to solve through bipartisan legislation. But I think we all know that Trump called a lot of Republican members, or called on them publicly, to reject the bipartisan deal. As one example of what this resolution called for, it asked for the president to have emergency power to close the border. That's something that the bipartisan deal was going to do before it was tanked. But I think there's a larger point with this immigration discussion that we need to be very focused on, which is when we let fear cloud our judgment, fear of people we don't know, fear of problems that we might not even have personal firsthand knowledge of in our lives or interaction with, that fear will cause us to do irrational things that actually make us less safe. One example is I attended a subcommittee hearing by Senator Moore that was held last year, in which we had border officials from Texas to come and describe on the ground what the cartels were doing. And one of the tactics that was described in the hearing is that cartels will send migrant flows, people, human beings, across one part of the border so that they can distract from the fentanyl that they're sending at a different part of the border. And I think that's such an important example of how our media responds to this and how they know they can exploit our fear of individual human beings so that they can move the much more dangerous thing, which is the drugs that kill people, at a different part of the border. So I and some of my colleagues opposed a type of messaging on immigration that's unhelpful, that's counterproductive to the bipartisan deal that we hoped to achieve, that would have increased, done a historic investment in border security, and try to keep that type of fear out of our electoral politics.
Yeah, I wonder, first of all, your response to that, but then what exactly will the National Guard from Georgia do to help?
I think the National Guard will be sent there to support the efforts by the National Guard of Texas. And specifically, I think Governor Kemp pointed out that they'll be working over there to engineer and to design a new building for the deployment of the troops that are coming in that area. I do not believe that our National Guardsmen will be sitting at a post with a rifle. They will be there as a support effort and with engineering background. So we're not sending troops into battle.
like we would in a war type situation. So I think you're going to see the National Guardsmen from Georgia go there to do what their intentions are around the country, and that is to help support the military that are deployed in other parts of the world. Now, to rebut a little bit about what my good friend said there earlier, you know, when you tie bills together, we do this in Atlanta from time to time at the Capitol. It's called a Christmas tree. You put different bills into one bill to try to pass something that's not favorable by adding something that is favorable to it. We try to pass things, and we've seen that in the budget before. People would put things in the budget that you may not vote for on an individual basis. We saw that in the bill that President Biden tried to pass in the Senate recently. We want President Biden to take the lead and show some leadership, reverse the orders that he put into place when he first went into office, close the border, build the wall, and ask Congress for support financially to continue the work that had been started by President Trump over 4 years ago.
Okay, I'll give you a chance for a quick response to that, then I want to get to something else.
Sure, I just think that when it comes to immigration, we need to stay focused and specific and not act out of fear. You know, when it comes to the border and fentanyl, we need to focus on that and the trafficking issues. You know, we have got great bipartisan support in this state for ending human trafficking. Let's focus on putting pressure on the cartels and the specific security threats that we face from that part of the border crisis, and let's move away from sort of an unhelpful, generic painting of immigrants with a broad brush.
Okay. I want to quickly get into two bills that you each have, and I'm going to start with yours. Yours, SR 527, would create a committee to investigate veterans' mental health and homelessness. Tell us about it.
Thank you for bringing that up.
Co-sponsor.
That's right. I mean, this is a resolution that's carried by Chairman Chuck Payne. He's the new chairman of the Veterans Committee. And what we're hoping to do as a Senate body is address the very difficult issues of veteran homelessness and mental health issues. But at the same time, I think what you find with a lot of social issues is that they're multifaceted, that you can't identify just one problem in isolation. And a lot of veterans are unfortunately stuck in this spiral of mental health issues that cause it to be difficult to maintain employment, to maintain stable housing, and be stuck in sort of a traumatic poverty cycle. What I'm excited about is that this Senate committee promises, if we create it, to focus on some of the root causes of veterans' struggles when they come back from service. And I think mental health is really at the core of that. You've got veterans who have profound, complex post-traumatic stress disorder that has been treatment resistant. The normal antidepressants and pharmaceuticals maybe just don't do the job. And a lot of times politicians are stuck in the position of just doing lip service to veterans, but without addressing their most serious clinical crises. And so I think what this study committee will do in the off-season this year, if we create it, is talk about alternative breakthrough therapies, about real mental health treatment for veterans that will lay the foundation for them to be successful in every part of their life.
Okay, we'll keep up with that bipartisan bill. I want to get with you finally on this resolution that is likely to make a lot of people happy. SR 511, recognizing March 2024 as Georgia Wine Month. I want to read part of the resolution, 511, about the vital agricultural stronghold of wine in Georgia. And it says that the wine industry has deep historical roots in the state of Georgia, notably that the creation of wine was among the key objectives that the colony focused on when it was founded as a trustee of the Crown in 1733. How about that?
How about that?
That it was part of that, all of that.
You could also trace back wine to the biblical days, if I'm not mistaken. You know? But we're blessed in Georgia, and especially up in North Georgia, to be part of what's called the wine country. And I live in Dahlonega. It's no secret that I have a lot of the wineries and the vineyards scattered throughout my district. I represent 7 counties, which are Dawson, Lumpkin, White, Union, Fannin, Gilmer, and Pickens. And in those 7 counties, we probably have in excess of 25 or 30 vineyards. And in fact, we had a federal designation just a few years ago recognizing the Dahlonega Plateau, which is a big deal in your vineyard business. And so we are going to promote that vineyard business and that winery business throughout our state. And so March is our month.
We'll have to have you come back to talk a little bit more about it, because we've run out of time, because that does it today for Lawmakers. I appreciate you both being on. We'll be back tomorrow, and we hope you will join us. Have a good evening.
News.